Is the world running out of silver? Well, we're about to get controversial up in here. Stay tuned. Well, how you doing out there, YouTube? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another edition of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack, episode number 57. As always, I'd like to thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to check out the new video. And if you'd like to help support this channel, then why not click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. You guys know I really do appreciate the support, and it does help the channel grow. So, in mid-2021, a statement from the U.S. Mint generated a lot of flack around a potential worldwide silver shortage. But, the hell, shortly thereafter, a new statement was issued clarifying that the only real shortage was the blanks or planchettes required to make, the Silver Eagles in sufficient quantity. Well, this hasn't quelled the cries of a silver shortage for sure. You're basically divided between two sets of people. One, those who believe that silver is running out in the next 10 years. And two, the others who believe there's plenty of untapped reserves and we'll have access to silver for years and years from now. But that being said, the Mint inadvertently caused yet another uproar when it announced that it would, quote unquote, this is directly from them, forego the production and sales of Morgan & Peace silver dollars in 2022. This calculated pause is directly related to the global pandemic's impact upon the availability of silver blanks from the Mint suppliers. The suspension will give the Mint time to evaluate the best way to allocate our limited supply of silver to ensure the best customer experience we can. We'll be required to make business decisions like this until the supply chain for silver blanks recovers from the disruptions caused by COVID-19. This is from Mint Deputy Director Ventris C. Gibson. So really, they qualified it this time with, look, we're not saying silver's gone, silver's running out. We're just saying our supplier's having a hard time getting us the blanks. And by the way, that supplier is Sunshine Minting, based out of Idaho, if you guys weren't aware. So does this translate to an actual silver shortage in any way? Well, I'll tell you why I don't think it does at all. Let's check it out. All right, before we dig down into the numbers, it's important to note that investment companies, well, they're always one of the first ones on the bandwagon when it comes to silver shortages, or even a hint of a silver shortage. Now, this particular company is the Oxford Club. It's a newsletter based on precious metals. And just like any other media, sensationalism freaking sells. Go to the bottom where it says that our reserves in the world are at less than 200 million ounces. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, does it? Well, that's what they'd have you believe. It's how they sell subscriptions. It's how investment firms get investors. And that's just the way it works. This chart will give us a fairly recent example of silver reserves held across the world. As you can see, the total number of reserve silver currently adds up to 530,000 tons. Not ounces, tons. What does that equal in ounces? Only about 16,960,000,000 ounces of reserve silver in the world. Not a whole lot. It's quite a difference from the Oxford Club's estimate of 200 million, no? Well, let's time warp back to 2016. That's when this chart was released by the USGS. This is when they assumed some of these metals would run out. You look at zinc, early 2030. Silver, gone by 2025. Gold, a little bit after 2030. Copper, late 2040s. Obviously, we're not going to be there. I'm not sure what they were basing it on, if they were just basing it on current reserves without mining additional silver. It's hard to tell where they actually pulled this data from. And yet another chart from the Visual Capitalist showing when some precious metals and other energy sources might run out. Now, they're stating that there's a limited supply of these commodities, and they're absolutely correct. Most commodities aren't infinite. But putting this chart in perspective, it's basing these figures on no additional mining, deposit discoveries, price changes, or even changes in consumption. In other words, the chart's only taking into account when we'll run out of each item based on current reserves and prices and without additional mining. If the silver price doubles, then hey, suddenly it becomes economic to mine more of it or to reach those more difficult deposits. It's simple economics. You have to remember that a good portion of silver mining in the world is a byproduct of other metal mining efforts. More than likely, dedicated silver mining operations wouldn't see a profit at today's prices. So they're not going to dig out those more difficult deposits unless the price goes up. It costs more money to get that hard to reach silver deposit. So that wouldn't make sense economically for the mines if silver's at a low cost like it is today at 25, 26 bucks an ounce. Now, it's entirely possible that some operations have already mined up quite a bit of silver that isn't even being accounted for, and they're holding it out until it's worth more. Of course, that extra cost would be passed on to stackers, investors, and mints, meaning we'll be paying more for silver in the future. It makes sense for these mining companies to, hey, we're already here, let's dig up the silver. We're just going to stash it away. It doesn't make any sense to sell it right now. We know it's going to go up. Let's just hold it. We're going to hold. It's no different from what we do as stackers. We buy it, we buy low, we buy the dips, we hang on to it. In our case, silver, we've been hanging on it forever. And then when it's right, the time's right, the money's up there, it increases in value. That's when you sell. It's no different for the mining companies. Now here's one more outdated chart that showed silver running out by 2020. As you can see, the only consistency on this one is the fact that the only thing they got right was the actual silver demand. You see where it's just increasingly gone up. For the most part, you had a little spike here. But for the most part, since 2012, it's only gone up, 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 up. All right? That's the only thing that this chart got right. We're not out of silver, and the reserves aren't in the negative. We're not in the negatives versus the supply. Yeah, there's an annual deficit of demand and mined silver. That happens almost every year. So it is what it is on that. But we didn't run out. All right, now that we've gone over the supply issues, let's take a quick look at the three categories that make up the most demand for silver. First one, investors. That's you and me. We're buying up the silver. We're storing it away for a rainy day. Also, the folks that are buying the ETFs and whatnot. Personally, I don't mess with ETFs. I'd rather have physical silver. That's just my preference. I'm not poo-pooing ETFs. I kind of am, but I'm not. That's your choice. You invest as you see fit. There is money to be made if you monitor it and keep an eye on it and turn it over at the right time. So the second source, jewelry. It's a big demand. There's a lot of demand for silver jewelry. And the last one, industrial. So these three categories make up 95% of silver demand, and they're all growing at a strong rate every year. All right, so I've given you some numbers on why we're not likely facing a present-day shortage of silver, but what about long-term? Well, let's go over some reasons that the silver supply could be taxed beyond its means here in the future. Number one, we talked about the USGS updating the world's silver reserves to 510,000 tons, or almost 17 billion ounces. But when you add up the demand on an annual basis, industry alone, just by itself, is accounting for about roughly 700 million ounces a year. Now, if you throw in the investors and the jewelry sectors, well, that accounts for nearly 1.5 billion or more ounces a year on its own. So you can do the math on how long it would take for the reserves themselves just to run out if no more silver was mined. Now, the investing sector alone would likely create a huge demand for more silver because, let's face it, if the supply is running low, that's when investors come in droves. That could drive mining operations to find and mine that difficult silver that I talked about earlier. But at a catch, it's going to be a much larger cost. So, I mean, it's expensive to dig for hard to find silver. It costs more. That being said, there's still about 1 billion ounces coming out of the ground each year, not including the reserves. So that does help mitigate some of the demand. Second reason, number two, recycling silver isn't really a big thing yet, simply due to the low price of silver and, well, let's face it, the cost required to extract it from products that are being discarded. So that can add up to a lot of silver simply being thrown out and never recovered. It's a hell of a process to get silver out of electronics, and it really doesn't yield all that much. So With silver being plentiful for the moment, it's not a priority. Number 3, any sudden stoppages in production could seriously affect estimates for silver supply. Well, I mean, the silver market is in perennial deficit with demand outstripping supply by literally millions of ounces. While it hasn't become a full-blown crisis yet, it might not be long before the headlines start inciting panic over a shrinking supply. And the last thing, this really is the final factor. Nobody can tell the future with what's going to be found for more deposits or how many new mines can be opened and how much more silver we can add. Nobody has that answer right now. So that in itself could be one of the huge balancers. All right, let's wrap this thing up. In summary, a couple things. It's not time yet to get into a panic over silver not being available. It's there. It's available. While your local LCS might have some empty slots in the display case, the online dealers have tons of silver products available for purchase if you want them. It seems all of them have the coins and the larger bars for sale and in quantity. So it's not time to panic yet. Next one, the U.S. Mint is having a supply chain issue and is unable to get their planchettes in order to make them. The Silver Eagles and the Morgans and the Peace Dollars and all that stuff. So premiums are pretty insane right now on all that. But hey, just because Eagles are being delayed due to supply chain issues doesn't mean there's a shortage of silver. The two do not correlate, not yet. And lastly, remember, private mints don't have to meet the same prerequisites and red tape as the U.S. Mint does when it comes to obtaining their silver. So the private mints are able to continually put out their products on a regular basis. Look, I get it. I know silver isn't infinite. It's absolutely going to run out in the future at some point. But in my own opinion, that time isn't right now. So keep stacking the dips, buy what you love, and don't forget that only 1% of humanity is stacking silver, so you're already in the 1%er club, and you're ahead of the game. Now, that number does increase in the U.S. alone. A recent survey revealed that about 15% of the population owns silver, while 12% own gold. Now, I don't know what the percentage is for both of those, or those who stack both, but I'm willing to bet that most of you in our community do just that. So that's going to wrap it up. I appreciate you hanging in there till the end. I'd love to hear your comments on what you think about the quote-unquote silver shortage. Do you think it's running out? Do you think it's getting there? Do you think we have enough reserves to go for a while? Do you think they haven't tapped into some deposits that they're aware of? Do you think the mining companies are storing some more reserves that they're not even reporting? Let me know. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. So I'll be back in a few days with the next video. Until that time, you know what to do. Yep, that's right. Get stacked. We out of here. Peace.